Well, we made it to Friday. Hi, everyone. You're watching CBC News BC. I'm Vineet Brach here in the Vancouver newsroom. Here's what's happening this afternoon. Well, a new electric passenger ferry is being proposed to connect Vancouver to Bowen Island and the Sunshine Coast. The Victoria-based company is Greenline. It's planning to use a fleet of all-electric vessels, which would seat around 150 passengers. Municipal, provincial, and federal government representatives all held a news conference in Vancouver to announce plans for the new passenger line.
An electric passenger ferry could help Vancouverites sail past congestion in the downtown peninsula, reducing vehicle traffic downtown and alleviating congestion, improving air quality, softening sound pollution, and contributing to the city's climate goals.
The company projects around 1,000 people will use it each day. If all goes according to plan, those services could start up in the spring of 2027. There's also more reaction coming in on the Vancouver's plan to build market rentals on city land. We heard about this just yesterday. So the first site at Pacific and Hornby in the downtown core would have more than 1,100 units. The city says these would be rented at market value for households that earn $90,000 to $194,000 a year. But Green Party City Councillor Pete Fry says the plan doesn't really address Vancouver's housing needs.
The mayor did talk about running the city like a business, and this is sort of consistent with that. It is concerning because I think where we see a lot of North American cities leverage city-owned land for affordable housing, and this is not that. And I would hope that any revenues that we generate from this pilot scheme would be directed back into affordable housing for median income workers in our city and to really sustain that.
Rezoning is set to happen this spring for the first site, and the city says it will be another 3 to 4 years until the shovels hit the ground. And earlier this week, we also heard about Vancouver's plan to really revive Granville Street into an entertainment hub. Well, that's over the next 10 years. But some business owners say they're frustrated with such a long timeline.
It was the worst December of all time, and now the worst January of all time. It's just been really, really slow. Meanwhile, costs are going up. We pay an insane amount for rent. We pay an insane amount for insurance. And, minimum wage keeps going up. So our expenses are rising.
So on Wednesday, the City of Vancouver unveiled this proposal, a new vision. It includes car-free zones, outdoor and indoor entertainment spaces, higher building densities and heights, and more hotels. The city says it hopes to transform the historic street into a safe and vibrant entertainment hub. And on the Capilano Reserve, the finishing touches are coming along for a major construction project. It's a covered lacrosse box for the community's teams. Lacrosse is a major cultural force for the Squamish Nation, played by generations. And the Early Edition spoke with one of the nation's councillors live this morning about its significance.
The power of sport today is going to drive the next generations. You can see the vibrancy from, the programs and the visitors saying, wow, the future looks bright for our people.
The facility is a $7 million project. It is expected to open in the coming months. And you are watching CBC News BC. I'm Vineet Brach. Stay with us right here. BC Today is up next. You're watching CBC News BC.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The public health emergency around toxic drug deaths continues. And now there are calls to hit drug dealers with harsher penalties, even murder charges. We'll discuss that idea with Kash and criminologist Wade Deisman. And you can weigh in on the open line. Plus, your reaction to what's needed to revitalize Granville Street. We'll read your emails. And it is Super Bowl weekend with Kendrick Lamar headlining the halftime show. Who is your favorite halftime show ever? We rank the best performances after 12:30. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Families of people killed by toxic drugs are calling on drug traffickers to face murder charges. The state of California is warning drug dealers their next charge could be murder. In November, the state passed Alexandra's Law. That's a new law making it easier to charge traffickers with murder. Matt Capelouto advocated for years for harsher sentences for traffickers after his daughter Alexandra was killed by overdose. He spoke to CBC reporter Jason Proctor for a special investigation.
What Alexandra's Law is, it's an admonishment that would be given to anybody convicted of a drug offense, making them aware of the dangers of those drugs, and that if they continue in this activity and someone dies as a result of drugs that they supply, they can be held accountable for murder.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre this week spoke as well about this. He told a press conference in Vancouver he would like to see life sentences for fentanyl dealers.
There will be life sentences for anyone caught trafficking, producing, or exporting over 40 milligrams of fentanyl. 40 milligrams is enough to kill 20 people. Anyone who is involved in trafficking that amount of fentanyl will get a life sentence. We will lock them up and we will throw away the key.
We're going to talk more about this in a couple of minutes with a couple of guests, and we're asking you as well, how do you think the justice system should treat traffickers of toxic drugs? And should toxic drug dealers be charged with murder? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. And I have two guests for this conversation. Kash is a former BC Solicitor General and was head of the Vancouver Police Drug Squad. Wade Deisman, criminologist at the University of the Fraser Valley. Good afternoon to both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I do understand that this is a really difficult topic. So just a reminder to people to take care as you listen, as we talk about this ongoing fentanyl crisis here in British Columbia and, of course, in the United States as well. Kash, I'll start with you. You are in Jason Proctor's piece, and you spoke with him about this idea of Alexandra's Law. What do you make of the idea to charge those who traffic in toxic drugs with murder charges?
Well, first of all, let's have a real understanding of what actually is taking place. And for politicians just to spurt off, we're going to lock people up for life for 40 milligrams is not appropriate. What I've been advocating for, and I've advocated for quite some time, is we focus on drug traffickers, of course, and people that make a profit from the sale or distribution or production of illicit drugs. I've said that for the last 2 decades on what we need to do to start correcting the problems. Now, when you have to understand the fentanyl part of it, and coming from my 32 years in policing and also raising a daughter who's only 17 years old at this particular time, when in fact the trafficker knows that they are actually selling what could be a toxic drug to some people. For example, there's such a tolerance for fentanyl with some that if you gave it to the recreational user, that would kill them instantly. So the people that traffic need to be held to account. And what I advocated for, and in Jason's piece that I'm looking forward to seeing, I've said, okay, we need to start to look at, for example, the ones that are dying. And we need to track that back to the individual that sold it to them, track that up the chain to the various levels of trafficking and production, and go after those people. And those are the ones that need to get life sentences. And as Poilievre says, throw the key away.
And that, speaking to Vancouver Sun crime reporter Kim Boland, that is very, very difficult to get to the kingpins, those who are behind the scenes. I mean, how possible is that?
It is possible, but let me tell you, it's going to take a lot of resources, and it's going to take the will of not only the police that are responsible for the investigation, for the criminal justice system, to not go after the low-hanging fruit, go after the ones where you're going to have a substantial deterrent to, if you're able to get to them.
Why did you started off by saying a politician talking about locking up the key? You're referring, I assume, to Pierre Poilievre, say, advocating for mandatory life sentences for people who traffic 40 milligrams of fentanyl. Given how lethal fentanyl can be, why is that inappropriate?
Well, what I'm telling you is some that could not be lethal to all 20 as he's advocating for. Like some of the hardened acute drug addicts in the downtown east side that are chasing the fentanyl high are looking for drugs that have fentanyl. They have a tolerance level where they can accept that, and that's the high that they want. And then there's others, for example, in the recreational market, if you're selling it, that's going to kill someone. So what I'm saying is you can't just have this blanket policy with respect to that. It's got to be pragmatic. It's got to be something that works. It can't be something that sounds good.
And Wade Deisman, what are your thoughts on this idea and how it would actually work in terms of the criminal code?
Well, I think the principle of there being an admonition at some point is a sound one. I think the idea of prosecuting people for murder is an understandable one. None of us can fully understand the trauma and the grief that these families go through who are struggling with this problem of fentanyl addiction. But I think all of us can empathize with and support the desire to see the punishment fit the crime. And I think that beneath this request is the feeling amongst many of the people who are victims that charging them as simply as drug crimes doesn't adequately reflect the darkness that's involved in perpetrating these kinds of crimes. And I want to go back to a point that Kash made. Article, made in his article, which is distinguishing between those who are kind of ensnared in the drug trade and those who are profiting from it. And I think that this is critical to an effective policing strategy, because prosecuting low-level dealers is not going to get to the heart of the matter. We know that many low-level dealers start off as users. And so the problem is they're actually perpetrator victims. And what we want to go after is the perpetrators, the people who are higher up in the food chain. We know this. But we need to have not greater severity. We need to have greater certainty that we're going to get them. Severity is not to result in any desistance. These people are hardened. They've already made up their mind that they're going to roll the dice. And frankly, a lot of them are smug in the certainty that they'll never be caught, or even if they are caught, that they'll never be prosecuted or convicted, right? And I think that's the trouble here is, we talk about punishment for a crime being swift and certain. And the problem is that we don't have that certainty. And it's because these rings are very complex, they're very adroit, they're very sophisticated.
Can I start, Wade, with, can I go back to something that you started with? You said that you think the idea of admonition is a sound one, and that refers to Alexander's Law in the United States, whereby people who are caught trafficking get an admonition that if you are caught again, this is going to be much tougher. Is that right?
And I think that warning and the public education, the denunciation associated with that is tremendously important. We're in a harm reduction mode here. And I think that, sometimes the public can get confused by being in a harm reduction mode where we say, if we can't actually get them to stop, we want to try to help them. But that ought not to be confused with the overwhelming public desire, social desire to have this problem desist, and to have those who are engaged in perpetrating and perpetuating the problem stop doing so. And that's what denunciation is about. And that's why admonitions are important to say, this is not a trajectory we want to be on, and we intend to punish you severely. And we want to, you know, bolster all of our mechanisms of certainty to say that you will be punished, right? And I think that, you know, the key premise here is that there's willful and intentional networking going on here. There's planning, there's premeditation, there's, you know, all of that kind of stuff that goes into making a successful drug operation. And we know this because we find these labs, right, that are being set up for this kind of thing. So there's no question that there's that element out there, and there's no question that kind of messaging on a public brand scale will help.
Let's take some calls now. We're asking you, how should the justice system treat traffickers of specifically toxic drugs, fentanyl? And should toxic drug traffickers be charged with murder, as is the case that has been unfolding in California under Alexandra's law that was advocated for by the family member of a victim of fentanyl overdose. And my guests, Kash, former BC Solicitor General, former head of the Vancouver Police Drug Squad, and Wade Deisman, criminologist at the University of the Fraser Valley. If you'd like to weigh in, you can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Let's take a call now from Corey in Cranbrook. Hi, Corey. What do you think of this idea? How far should these charges go?
I personally think they should take them as far as they possibly can. These individuals and organizations, they're completely malicious. They want nothing more than to make money. They don't care about your children or anybody's children or husbands or wives. They're basically just murderers without a gun in their hand. And I'm not a fan of Poilievre, the Conservatives, but this is the first intelligent thing that I think I've heard him say. I don't know why these people and organizations seem to go more or less unaccountable for their crimes. My little brother, he passed away from a accidental fentanyl overdose several years ago, and I was able to come up with a pile of evidence and names to give to the police, and absolutely nothing was done about it. It just went on deaf ears.
Why? What happened?
I don't know. I mean, I actually even found narcotics in his house after he had passed away, and I presented it to the RCMP with names, and we asked for follow-ups, and nothing was ever done. I couldn't honestly tell you why. It's pretty frustrating.
I'm sure.
And I'll just keep it really, really short. That's kind of my comment on that. I just wanted to make one other comment about the organizations. You know, organized crime like the Hells Angels and stuff, I might be wrong, so please correct me if I am, but I thought in Canada it was illegal to be even a member of a criminal organization. So if that is the case, and I apologize if I've got my information wrong, you know, if you see these guys walking around, these idiots walking around with their patches and their colors, they should be arrested and thrown in jail.
Corey, thank you very much.
They're committing a crime by identifying as being part of an organization. And I think that maybe, just maybe, if you put enough pressure on people, things are going to change. They might not, I don't know. But I'd like to see something happening because I'm tired of hearing these stories about young people, or not just young people, but people all over Canada and North America dying. And you know, they've got medical health issues, depression, mental health, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's just really, really unfortunate that.
And you've
more isn't done.
You've experienced that loss.
Police forces.
Yeah, you've experienced that loss yourself too, Corey, and I'm so sorry that you have. And obviously, you tried to pursue something, and I'm sure very frustrating for you to not have.
And I'm sure my story isn't unique.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, Corey, thank you so much. I really appreciate your calling in. And again, I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me just double check that, factually check what his comment there about Hells Angels. What are they classified as, Wade Deisman?
It would be classified as a member of a criminal organization. And he's quite right. It's a good pathway to follow. The difficulty always is in establishing definitively that they are a member of that criminal organization.
Not just wearing a patch doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean so.
Yeah, putting on the airs and all that kind of stuff, right?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Corey, for sharing your story. Appreciate it. Myrna is joining us now. Myrna from Haida Gwaii. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for taking my call today. You know, just a couple of things that came up. One is once you put people in jail, you have to pay for all of their needs in Canada because we don't believe in submitting people to terrible conditions like even our neighbors down south do. So that's one thing to think about. And if we're going to put people in jail, as maybe they deserve to be for making these terrible chemicals that are killing wonderful people, let's at least think about a way to put them to work, to give them, let some of their talents and things that they do have that are good about them, let them thrive. And, you know, let's think about food security. Maybe people can be involved in building greenhouses and taking care of things for people in the future. But just saying putting people in jail the way that our jails run now is not going to be a good solution for anybody. And I think that we're a lot smarter than that. And we should ask young people what they think, because they have a lot to say. I'm just about 60, but I'm very interested in what young people have to say about this issue.
Yeah, Myrna, thank you so much for the call from Haida Gwaii. Yes, so the point there around just putting people away, what happens to them when it comes to the conditions in prisons, but what are what would be the logistics of saying we're now going to really pursue more charges, more severe charges? I believe manslaughter is what is most common when it comes to drug trafficking. But what would be the logistics? What would be the cost implications of some of these kinds of harsher penalties, mandatory minimum life sentences that Pierre Poilievre is proposing, Kash?
Well, let me tell you, before we even get these people to prison, where Myrna was talking about, to hold them accountable and possibly deter other people from being involved in this, we have to get them through the system. It's very cost intensive, resource intensive to do an investigation to get these individuals to be held to account for the actions. For example, if they sold a tainted product to a person that died from that. I strongly believe we should be investing in that. I strongly believe that we should give the resources to law enforcement and within the criminal justice system to actually pursue those things. Let's not even worry about the other side of it. Let's just get to that point, because we're putting the cart before the horse too soon. And this is the change that needs to be made. This is the policy change that needs to be made. And this is what our politicians and policymakers have to start to do, is saying, okay, let's get these people in front of, whether it's manslaughter, whether it's criminal negligence or something more significant, such as second-degree murder, to hold them to account. Let's get there before we start talking about these grandiose things down the road. And lay out a plan of how we're going to get there. We need resources in policing to do those investigations. We need procedures, standard operating procedures within our law enforcement partners and within the criminal justice system branch, especially the administration of justice here in BC, which is under the provincial government, on saying we are going to assertively pursue this as a policy here in British Columbia with people that are dealing drugs, regardless of what that drugs is, that's causing harm to society. That's what we have to do. Until we get there, everything else is just rhetoric and talk.
Let's read some emails here. I think some of these echo what both of you have been talking about. Michael writes, given that there are two different kinds of drug dealers, those that consciously decide to do it and those who are pressured or through certain conditions do it reluctantly, and also as the main producers or distributors, the kingpins are never found or punished, the death penalty, which would be in the States, is not acceptable. Punishment should be service to society and payment of damages. Paying for incarceration is silly when society ends up housing and feeding criminals. The other aspect is demand. The reasons for use or the choice to use needs to be part of this picture. Treatment, no shame, and care for everyone in society will lessen the impact of drugs. Thank you so much for your email. Let's go to Ian in Sydney now. Hi, Ian.
Hello.
Yes, what are your thoughts on harsher penalties for drug dealers?
I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I believe that people that knowingly sell fentanyl should be charged with something like criminal negligence at the least and attempted murder. And it's not, not necessarily the street level drug dealers. It's got to be at the higher levels. A good friend of mine's son, who was in his late 20s, not a regular drug user, died of a fentanyl overdose just because he smoked something outside of a bar. And, that the people that are knowingly putting fentanyl into the market, I believe should be held accountable. And I think this is what we need to do.
Yeah, Ian, thank you. Thank you for the call from Sydney. Let me just wrap up with Wade Deisman here. I have about a minute, but what's the likelihood? You hear from families who are advocating. That's what happened with Alexander's Law in the United States. What's the likelihood if enough families advocate here that something like that could be passed?
Yeah, I think that, in the final analysis, it comes down to pragmatics, and we have to acknowledge that even if this law, even if that law were enacted here, it's not likely to have the effect of desistance. As I said earlier, the problem is supply. It's not just with the supply of fentanyl, it's with the supply of people who are willing to engage in the distribution of fentanyl. And, when one, high-level dealer gets taken down, another one pops up. This is a hydra. Another one pops up, or two more pop up. That's the nature of the phenomena. So to get to the other side of the equation, to talk about the demand side, I think is really important. We have to have a full spectrum solution, so supply and demand. And on the demand side, what we have is the reality of people who are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right. And susceptible to this kind of thing.
That certainly is part of the discussion as well, the victims in this. Thank you so much to both of you for your expertise. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kash Heed and Wade Deisman. My thanks to Kash Heed, former Solicitor General in BC, and criminologist Wade Deisman at the University of the Fraser Valley. We have an email here from Jules. My son passed away recently from toxic drug poisoning. I agree that we should make mandatory life sentences for those who traffic. However, the, quote, low-hanging fruit, as was mentioned, are also greatly at fault. The lower-hanging fruit are much more scared of massive sentences than those who consider themselves invisible. Nothing will bring my baby boy back, but maybe those who sell to our young people might think twice if we start getting hard on them. I'm so sorry for your loss. Jules, it's a difficult topic, and I do acknowledge that for those who have called in and who are listening. And I'm really sorry for your loss, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on this issue. We'll continue to follow it, of course, the discussion around what should be done with in terms of the criminal justice system to deal with drug traffickers. This call from Pierre, Poilievre, a proposal to create mandatory minimum sentences, life sentences for those who traffic 40 milligrams of pure fentanyl. And he also proposes that traffickers caught with between 20 and 40 milligrams of pure fentanyl would be sentenced to a mandatory 15 years in prison. And to do that, he said he would repeal changes made to the criminal code back in 2022 that ended some mandatory minimum sentences. So that is from Pierre Poilievre, and you'll see Jason Proctor's report tonight on CBC News. And you can go to our website, cbc.ca/news. It's 12:30 now. This is BC Today. Thank you so much for joining us. We're live on CBC Radio 1, CBC Television, and live streaming as well on the CBC BC streaming service, and on YouTube at CBC British Columbia. And we'll be back coming up in our next half hour. We're going to look ahead to the weekend as the big sporting event takes place. I'm sure you know the Super Bowl takes place this Sunday. We're going to talk about the best of the halftime show performances. So let us know if there's one that sticks out for for you. We'll take that. We'll take your calls coming up with Rohit Joseph after the CBC News Update with Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. BC's Jobs Minister says the province has showed strength in the face of the uncertainty caused by U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of tariffs. Diana Gibson highlighted new numbers from Statistics Canada showing more than 10,000 private sector jobs were added last month. She says BC is actively working with other provinces to reach agreements to reduce internal trade barriers and protect any threatened jobs. Meanwhile, following his opening remarks at an economic summit today, Prime Minister Trudeau could be heard away from the microphone discussing Trump. Trudeau reportedly said Trump's 51st state comments are no joke and are linked to the U.S. wanting Canada's critical minerals. And a man from Newfoundland has been charged with first-degree murder in a decades-old cold case involving a BC woman. Donna Ogilvie was 24 and visiting Toronto in 1998 when she was strangled to death in a parking lot. Investigators say new forensic techniques using DNA have allowed them to identify 50-year-old Ronald Ackerman as the suspect. And now the forecast. An Arctic outflow warning continues for the north coast with cold temperatures and strong winds. Highs around -16 and mainly sunny in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly cloudy with a high of -14. Highs from -10 to -1 with lots of sunshine in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, clearing this afternoon with a high of -6. And mainly cloudy in Greater Victoria, a mix of sun and cloud in Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley with highs around +1. That's your CBC News Update from Vancouver.
Thank you so much, Rob. You have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. This is BC Today, live on CBC Radio 1. And for our listeners in Metro Vancouver, here's what you can hear this afternoon on the Coast.
Hello there, it's Gloria Makarenko here, and I hope you can join us later this afternoon for On the Coast. You know, millions of people are going to be tuning into the Super Bowl this upcoming weekend, so we are going to talk to a researcher who says it should serve as a reminder of the dangers of concussions. We'll hear more about just what's being done right now locally in sports to help prevent concussions. We'll also give you a preview of the Invictus Games kicking off this weekend, and this weekend a brand new Canadian Mint coin is going to be unveiled commemorating Hogan's Alley, and we're going to find out more about that this afternoon between 3 and 6. I hope you can join us for On the Coast.
Thank you, Gloria. We're going to look forward to that. Love to hear more about commemorating the neighborhood of Hogan's Alley. That's Gloria Makarenko coming up this afternoon on the Coast. And on our last program, we talked about Granville Street in downtown Vancouver and efforts to revitalize the entertainment district that's been waiting over the years. We asked for your emails as well as to what makes for a thriving night entertainment district. Justin writes, downtown Granville should be made car-free and be part of a city network of car-free Sunday routes. Bringing positive daytime energy to downtown Granville as well will help with better public perception, general safety, and better business. Morgan writes, I'm in my mid-30s, no longer go to Granville Centre. I've traveled all over the world. The most fun and safe environments are ones that go till 5 a.m. This is BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very nice to be with you this Friday afternoon, gloriously sunny out there. And this weekend, you may be getting ready with your snacks already because, of course, it is Super Bowl Sunday. Now, for some people, it's not really about the game, but for a lot of people, it is. Yes, there's a football game, right? With the Kansas City Chiefs aiming for a three-peat victory, this time against the Philadelphia Eagles. For music fans, though, the halftime show is taking center stage, and it is massive. This year's performance is Kendrick Lamar, or will be brought to you by Kendrick Lamar. And we've seen Prince, Shania Twain, The Weeknd, Madonna, Katy Perry, U2. We are asking you, what is the best Super Bowl halftime show ever? Maybe we'll declare it by the end of this show. We'll rank them all. And we're asking you which one is your favorite. You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And if you want to email us, we're at bctoday@cbc.ca, ranking the Super Bowl halftime shows. Which one is the best ever? I have my thoughts, and so does my guest. Rohit Joseph is a host of the CBC music show Vibin, which airs this weekend. Hello there, Rohit.
Hello, Michelle. How's it going?
I am really well. Nice to see you again after our Make the Season Kind show that we hosted together back in December. I see you've got nice...
I was going to say that feels like so long ago, but it really wasn't.
It really wasn't. It was so nice to raise funds for the food banks, of course, around British Columbia. Is it cold where you are? You've got a nice mustard yellow toque there.
I mean, this apartment gets a little more cold air coming through in the wintertime, but it also does the opposite of getting way too much sun in the summertime. So I don't know. The apartments need to be redesigned or something.
Yeah,
so.
best or worst of both worlds. Okay, how big a deal is the halftime show, first of all?
I mean, it is capitalism on steroids in a lot of ways. But this is the thing, like for artists, for musicians, it is an incredible opportunity. Usually this opportunity goes to the best of the best. So it's more of a validation, right, if anything, for the music industry's biggest stars, hence the names you mentioned earlier, from Shania Twain to Prince, Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And, what I think is especially important about it is that because it's such a big audience, it's like the mainstream of the mainstream. It is also a way for an artist to get new fans and expose their music to a whole new generation or generations of people. So I think it is a big deal, whether or not you're a fan of the advertising and all the other shenanigans that goes on behind it. You cannot deny that it's an incredible opportunity for any musician or artist.
Yes, and I've read that they actually don't get paid. The production is paid for, but the benefit is, you're right, is in the exposure. And I think it was the Who gained a whole new audience of streaming fans as a result of performing on stage. So that's a good point, that it is really a milestone in a musician's career. And yeah, all these big, huge stars. I'm looking at a photo right now of, there's Mary J. Blige with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, and there's Beyonce and Bruno Mars. I forgot about the Jennifer Lopez and Shakira one too. I thought that was a really good one. And it's interesting because there was a real turnaround. Like, it all began, they had halftime shows from, the 60s, and they would have marching bands on the field, gradually adding big name singers. And then in 1991, New Kids on the Block, you remember them? they took the stage. Yeah, they took the stage. And then eventually Michael Jackson in 1993. And that's when kind of the Super Bowl became, the halftime show became the blockbuster that it is. And it's given us a lot of moments as well. Like, what are your own favorite performances? Who tops the list for you?
Oh, I can tell you for sure. One of the first that comes to my mind is the 2013 Beyonce Super Bowl halftime show. I was actually out of the country at that time. I was on exchange studying in Ireland, in Dublin. And even there, people, in my dorm, in my residence, were like, let's watch the Super Bowl. And it's like, really? I thought you guys, I didn't even care about, American football. I was like, no, it's because of Beyonce, you idiot. Like, and like, hearing a Dutch guy say that really took me by surprise. And I'm like, okay, you're probably right. It's probably going to be worth tuning in. And I'm so glad that I listened to my Dutch friend, Mark, shout out, because that was an incredible show. Beyonce performed all the biggest hits up to that point, and even had a reunion on stage with Destiny's Child, which I think floored everyone, because anybody who grew up in the early 2000s knows Destiny's Child and knows what a big deal they were for R&B and just for Black music in general. It was an incredible moment to see Beyonce reunite with her Destiny's Child members. And then you just mentioned this one, but as a hip hop fan, the 2022 Super Bowl halftime show with Dr. Dre, Snoop, Eminem, 50 Cent hanging upside down. Iconic.
Yeah.
Mary J. Blige, and then all performing the biggest hits. Yeah, I think and Kendrick Lamar made a brief
Yes,
appearance
he
at
was
that
there.
point.
Yeah.
And Anderson .Paak, one of my favorites, was on the drums. It was just so well put together.
Living his best life with the biggest smile on his face while playing the drums there in the back. I remember that so well.
Yeah, what about you, though? Michelle, I feel like you've been tuned to the halftime shows even longer.
You know what? I was talking to someone about this, and I realized that I started getting into the halftime shows because of the Katy Perry one, which that was a time when my daughter was really into Katy Perry. She was maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 at the time. And so we had to watch Katy Perry because she's performing. And it was just such a spectacle. I don't necessarily love her music, but she came in on an animatronic lion to sing Roar. And then was flying by the end of it. and left shark. That gave us the iconic left shark moment because there was someone, she had these mascots dancing behind her, and one of them seemed to go rogue with the choreography, and it was the cutest thing ever. So I think since then I thought, well, this is a good show. I'm going to watch them every year. And I have. I would say you brought up Beyonce with Destiny's Child, having Michelle Williams and Kelly Rowland jump out of the ground to join her and just get their stance, not missing a beat. That was really awesome. And my favorite, I have to say, I have a personal favorite. I think people will say Prince. Objectively, you could say his was the best, but my favorite is Bruno Mars. Because he was very young in his career and didn't have a whole lot of hits, but wow, did he ever bring a performance. He is an incredible live performer. Started off with this drum solo just right on him, and then his band came out, they're all dressed in gold jackets and narrow ties. Just fantastic. And I thought that was quite explosive. They just exploded on the stage. So I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know, Rohit.
I just want to add to the Bruno Mars one. Honestly, that one, I think this is another thing about the Super Bowl halftime show, why it's a big deal. Sometimes you really get to see the true talent of these performers.
Yes.
Sometimes I think people dismiss the biggest pop stars as being there's a team of people that write songs for them. They're some people think some artists are lip syncing or whatever. It's when you get to see an artist like Bruno Mars playing the drums live, then dancing and singing at the same time live, I think it's undeniable then that this guy is an all-star. He's a superstar. And it gave me respect for Bruno Mars for sure. I used to think his music is fine, but then seeing him perform live like that, it made me pay attention. And then, he went on to, we mentioned Anderson .Paak. He then went on to make an amazing album that was a tribute to the 70s Motown era.
With Silk Sonic.
And
yes.
So it really does get to showcase the range of talents these performers, these musicians have.
And I'll shout out to Canadians as well. You mentioned lip syncing. There was this debate over Shania Twain when she performed with No Doubt, but I thought she did a fantastic job. The Weeknd, who made history as the first solo Canadian to headline the Super Bowl halftime show. That was amazing as well. The Weeknd has a new album out too. Okay, we have an email from Randy who writes, yes, Beyonce with Kendrick Lamar as well, and Prince and Snoop and Dre. In that order. I like how he has ranked them.
Yeah, that's an interesting ranking.
That's very good. Thank you very much for that, Randy. Asking you on the open line, what is your favorite Super Bowl halftime show ever? Who is the person, who's the performance that still sticks out in your mind? 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Other performers, if I can jog your memory, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, and the E Street Band in 2005. The Who, as I mentioned, in 2010. Madonna, I remember she was wearing all gold in 2012. And yes, Katy Perry in 2015. 2015. 2006 was the Rolling Stones. Okay, so there you go. Jog your memory, and hopefully you can think back to those shows as well. Ron is calling us from Victoria. Hi, Ron. Is there a performance at the Super Bowl that sticks out for you?
Yeah, well, I am a fan of Prince.
Oh, yes.
And part of the reason for his performance being so fantastic was the rain.
Oh, describe it to us, because this is the moment that really is iconic. He was singing Purple Rain at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, and then
it was almost like the rain was cued.
Yeah.
to soak him down. But no, I was mentioning that I'm not a huge fan of rap. I understand the talent and I understand the poeticness of it.
Yeah.
But I like melody and performances, and that has to be Prince. I mean, I did hear Bruno Mars. Yes, amazing. They're all amazing. Justin Timberlake, of course.
Yes.
Famous performance.
Yeah.
With Jackson, but so I'm choosing Prince.
I like it. I think that you've made a good choice.
Solid pick.
Well, it's a shout out to my son. He just turned 30, and he's a huge Prince fan and a musician. So, that's it.
Shout out to your son and you as well for having really impeccable taste, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the call. It really was. I mean, I think most people will say Prince had the best performance because of really how well-rounded he was as a musician. So many people, you could say Bruno Mars, Beyonce, have been influenced by Prince. So his legacy, his catalog, and that moment when he's singing Purple Rain, he's on stage, I think he was alone and had that guitar. Next thing you know, it's starting to rain and he just keeps going. It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. I mean, again, not to mention, that's just that was destiny. That rain was like Ron said, it was almost like it was cued, and I don't know, maybe the elements knew, we had to line this up for Prince. And he also did some covers of other legends that influenced him. I think he did an Along the Watchtower cover and a few others. Just again goes to show he could sing, he can dance, he could play the guitar so well, and he can do that on the biggest stage. It is hard to compete against Prince when it comes to the Super Bowl halftime shows, but curious, what if there's others that maybe we haven't mentioned. I will say, one that I just thought of that I was watching back, and it did look like just I wish I was there kind of moment was Paul McCartney in 2005, and then when he busted out Hey Jude, and the whole almost 70,000 people in this stadium in Florida, Jacksonville, just singing together. I mean, that's a song that as soon as it goes on, everybody will sing. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you know the Beatles, you know that song. And Paul McCartney wisely putting that at the end of the set to close it out and getting the audience to take it away at the end, to sing the whole song. To hear an arena like that, I think those are powerful moments. I mean, that goes to show that music and the Super Bowl halftime show, it can go beyond the sort of consumerism and actually bring people together.
Wow, I love that. So well put, Rohit. Asking you, was the Paul McCartney one a favorite for you? That was quite the moment, and really to have a Beatle on stage for the Super Bowl, it really is. That's a legacy, right? That's just celebrating their legacy. So asking you, what's your favorite Super Bowl halftime show ever? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And Mary is our next caller now from Vancouver. Hello, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. Thanks for calling. What Super Bowl halftime shows stick out for you?
Of course. So mine has to be Beyonce 2014.
Yeah.
That was my favorite one for sure.
Oh, is that the one when she was with Coldplay and Bruno Mars? Or
No,
was that
this
the one
is
with
the one
Destiny's
with
Child?
Destiny's Child,
Okay,
yes.
not that I'm trying to
And
bring
that was-
Bruno Mars in again, but yeah. No, what did you love about it, Mary?
It was just her presence. It just stood out. It meant that she was here. She was on stage and she was ready. And one thing I really liked about it was before she came on camera or when she showed herself, she basically showed her full image before she performed, which was very amazing.
Oh, wow. And you have another one you'd like to raise as well.
Yeah, I think her Destiny's Child back in, I believe it was 2001.
Wow.
That one really stuck out to me. Very nice, beautiful harmony. It was just really pretty.
I can't imagine, how many times have they taken the stage at the Super Bowl? And do you also want to raise the Prince performance?
I do. I
Yeah.
have to say yes. Prince for sure.
Mary, thank you so much. What a great way to describe how Beyonce started off and kicked off that 2014 performance at the halftime show. Lauren is next in Burnaby, and I love this call. Lauren, go ahead. What's your favorite Super Bowl halftime show?
Oh, hi. Thank you. I just had to call with a quick shout out for Rihanna, who destroyed it. It was amazing. While pregnant.
She was, and she announced it right then and there on stage. Not announcing it,
Right?
but just kind of, here it is. Yes, and you're saying, how come no one's mentioning Rihanna? Yes, go ahead. You tell us why she destroyed it on stage.
Well, her hits are, becoming timeless anthems. Her majesty, she just sort of presented herself. Her dancers were doing the dancing. She was just, strutting through her space. And I just felt like she owned that performance, and I was in awe.
Yeah, I still remember when the camera kind of swooped in on stage, just through the dancers, all wearing red, and she was there at the very end of the line. And you're right, the dancers did quite a lot of the work, but there she was, like, just soak me in, just soak it in.
Oh, yeah. And she does a little pause to fix her makeup in the middle.
Oh,
You
that's
remember
right.
that moment? Oh, my gosh.
Yes, because of course she has a makeup line. Just,
I know, a little plug.
little plug there.
yeah.
But that's a really, really good one, Lauren. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I just want to also say I'm still mad at Justin Timberlake on behalf of Janet. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, you know what? Okay, I'm actually kind of glad you raised that. Okay, we're talking about moments at the Super Bowl halftime show, Rohit. Yes, the Janet Jackson performance that really was controversial because of it coined the term wardrobe malfunction, and this was at the end of her performance with Justin Timberlake. What kind of pop culture moment did that become for us?
I don't know. I think it's so, for me, it just tells you about the times.
Yeah.
I don't know how like, you wonder, like, would that have even been would people have morally freaked out about it and blamed Janet Jackson? Like, if that happened now, maybe the same reaction would have happened. But to me, I would hope that, like, we've kind of maybe realized a little bit about, just why did we get into a moral panic? That's the thing. It seemed like we should have been above that. Like, even as I was still a kid at that time when it happened, and I just thought, like, why was this a big deal? So I do think it kind of made us realize, like, sexism, misogyny. It was unfortunately, I think, whether or not you like to admit it, that was part of the conversation of why it had the reaction it did.
And she's continued on since. I still follow her on social media, and that conversation around, what about Justin Timberlake and that, she has persevered after that controversy, that's for sure. She's on tour now, I think. Janet Jackson, she was my first concert. Rick writes, in my opinion, the best halftime show was U2. Yes, that was a really significant one. It was the year after September 11th, 2001, the terrorist attacks on the United States. A beautiful musical memorial to the people who lost their lives on September 11th. I just watched that actually in preparation for this, Rick. Thank you very much for raising that. Heather writes, I don't watch football, but I do watch the halftime show. The Weeknd. The Weeknd was the best yet. Yes. Representing Canada, of course. he's, I mean, right now, just iconic. Diane writes, it's true the halftime show is usually quite the production, heavily promoted, but why don't we get to see the cheerleaders at any game? Sometimes the camera pans by them, but we never get to see their performances. I'm sure they work very hard on their routines and should get some airtime. I'd love to see them. That's a great point, Diane. Thank you very much for that. As we wrap up here, Rohit, Kendrick Lamar this weekend, what kind of moment is this?
I mean, it's a big moment. Kendrick Lamar had an incredible year. We all know about the beef by now, even if you're not a rap fan.
Poor Drake watching the Grammy win. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, now I feel kind of bad for Drake at this point, but at the same time, Kendrick is gonna put on an incredible show. I've had the fortune of seeing him live. I'm curious to see if he'll incorporate like New Orleans culture, the Mardi Gras marching band culture, and put it like a different twist to his music, make it even more lively, more intense. So, you know, aside from the Drake beef stuff, I think you're in for a musical treat. He'll and you know, as Kendrick tends to do, he tends to weave in the traditions of so many generations of African American artists, and I think you're going to see that in this performance. You're going to see something that really weaves together the history of Black art and Black artists, and I think we're in for a treat.
His song with SZA called Luther, that shouts out to the late, great singer Luther Vandross. And looking forward to seeing SZA on stage with him as well. She's the only one that's been announced so far. Okay, I love this email from Mario Canseco. From the pollster Mario Canseco writes, where's the love for Lady Gaga? Yes, that is one of my favorite ones as well, Mario. Thank you for that, because she sang, she danced, she jumped up into the air and caught a football midair.
That's right. Yeah.
It was incredible. Lady Gaga. No, that was certainly memorable. I also, let's not forget Jennifer Lopez and Shakira. I thought their performance was, again, another spectacle. So, okay, we're in for a treat this weekend, I guess, is what we're all saying. Looking forward to it. And you're going to talk about this as well on your show, Vibin, right? And when can we hear that?
Yeah, tomorrow afternoon from 4 to 5 o'clock. Joseph Otu from CBC Kelowna, he's co-hosting it with me. We're going to talk not only about the Super Bowl halftime show, but kind of reflect on where hip hop is at and, you know, how it's even growing here in BC.
Of course. We've got our own favorites, don't we? Rohit, such a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rohit Joseph, host of CBC Music, the CBC Music Show, Vibin.